Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the Fintech Hunting Podcast. We have an incredible guest for you today. He is a branding, PR, and marketing expert in financial services. He's a community builder, a social media guru. Please help me welcome Eric Skates, Executive Vice President of Marketing at First Option Mortgage. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me today. At first, I was like, who are you talking about? But, that's really humbling, and thank you for saying all that. It's really kind, and I'm excited to be here today.
Well, it is great to have you as a guest. All of those things are true. But for our listeners, maybe who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how did you get into the mortgage industry?
Well, it's funny that you asked that because, everything happens for a reason, and when you get started in a career of anything, you never know really where you're going to end up. But I started out right out of high school at a real estate law firm, and I was helping my sister. She got a job as a post-closing, assistant, and she needed help, as a paralegal to really help that, law firm really thrive. So she pulled me in to kind of help out with doing some administrative duties. And, me being right out of high school, I didn't have a job at that time. So I was like, of course, sure. So I did post-closing myself, and then I did pre-closing. And after that, I was at KSU doing a communication degree. So I was working on that. And so I wanted, why not go into real estate? So I got my real estate license as a realtor because my family are all in real estate as well. And I did that for a couple of years. While I was doing that, I got engaged to my wife, who I still am with after all these years of, going through different processes of what you want to do in your life. And so in that time of 2008 is, when everything happened in real estate. So I was told basically either, get a job or, I don't know how we're going to survive this. So I did jump into the nonprofit organization management industry for a little bit. Okay. And I say a little bit, it was about 6 years. And that's where I really started harnessing a lot more of my marketing skills. I did that in real estate as well, but and that's where I realized I didn't really like sales as much because I liked the marketing side of it more, rather than just going and showing homes. But I feel for all those realtor professionals out there, it's a tough job. So back to, what I was doing in regards to getting into nonprofits. I handled communications, PR, early on social media. That was the MySpace time as well as Facebook, but showing my age, of course. And getting into that, I realized, planning events and structuring social media strategy and, business in that realm really led me into my next opportunity, which was at a mortgage company. And loved doing that for 6.5 years. And so then I jumped to a new one where I am today with a new great opportunity as EVP of marketing at First Option Mortgage. And that's it.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to ask you more about First Option later on, but I follow you on social media. I know we engage with one another on social media. I see that you've been to a few live events. I've been to some live events. Give me your feeling on live events, especially as a marketer in today's day and age. So much has gone to digital, which is important to have digital, but tell me, kind of your reaction so far from being at some of the live industry events.
Well, it's really funny that you ask because, with COVID and everything, we haven't really had the live events. And in my background, I've always worked the events, and having to go and be behind a booth or, make sure everything's set up. And, when you walk up to it, you don't know what has been going on behind the scenes to get all and ready for you as the consumer to walk up and have a conversation. But as being just someone who goes to an event, it's so new to realize that, you're there to gain some knowledge, network, meet people. And at these live events now, they're so much different than they used to be because of, you don't know who you can really shake hands with. If they feel comfortable in doing that, you kind of have to ask now and be like, can I, and and have the conversations with people. But as you sit down and really, dive into how they are, how they're feeling, it's not so much just sales driven anymore. It's asking people really what they're about, who they are, what they've been doing, and how they feel about being out in public again and getting out there to really do business in this, I guess you could say, new normal.
Well, and I think that's one of the challenges, especially as marketers, right? Of everything shifted to digital. I think there's a ton of benefits from digital, and we'll probably talk about those shortly. But the one thing that you really can't replicate is those personal interactions, going up the escalator, going down the escalator, as you're waiting in line for a coffee, as you're waiting, to get your dinner reservation. Those times of interacting with people, and then to your point of being able to actually sit down, what I have found is the conversations appear to me to be much more meaningful.
Absolutely.
People now want to know, how are you? What's new with your family? Hey, how have you kind of survived COVID, instead of just launching into a sales pitch? And I find that's a very strong benefit of the live interactions that I've had.
Oh, and to your point, of course, as well. And, meeting these people for the first time in person after you've learned about them online, for example, you and I have never met in person yet. Right. I feel like I know a lot about you. And there's so many people that I met at this past event that I went to for the Mortgage Collaborative. And in that, I found I was kind of like fanning out on a lot of these people, because they post all these things and they're so introspective, and they get so many likes and shares, and they become these bigger than life personalities, and you meet them and they're these down to earth people who are just great to talk to, but you feel like you already have a rapport with them because you've been interacting so much. So it kind of goes from, if you can put yourself out there authentically online and be that authentic person in person, then that will really help you a lot more.
Well, I love what you just said there, because I think so many people struggled with leaning into digital, right? And they didn't, but the people that did and fostered and developed relationships, like you said, we met through social, and we now engage on LinkedIn, and I feel I know you, and I've seen some of your trips and your kids, and some of the activities. I think then when you actually meet with these people live, besides that, wow, hey, there's a rock star, or there's something else, you sit down and you talk to them, and it's a much more meaningful, it's a much more intentional, and you actually feel like you're sitting down with a friend, not just somebody that you've interacted with. So I think finding that right mix of digital, of live, and being able to really leverage those is critical. Let's talk a little bit about what are some of the biggest challenges, what are some of the trends for mortgage marketers in today's environment?
Well, definitely, I would say finding that consumer base. And then also, what do you market? Do you market your business as a company, or do you market your culture? Do you market, to the consumer specifically and your culture? You got to find the balance, because the consumer that's looking for you to do business, they want to know that they're working with people and not just, a AI, a logarithm that they can go onto a website and put in their information and not ever hear from somebody. So if you can do it in a way that it's, across the board strategic, with a good balance of culture, with promotions, and also understanding, what your audience is asking for from, a resource standpoint of what are they looking for to know? What can you give them? How can you educate them about the mortgage process? Because it can be scary. It really can. And if somebody's going to put a social security number into a website, they have to trust that you are a reputable company and not just some person who puts something online maybe once or twice a month, and because those consumers are going to go and look you up and make sure that you're doing business and you do business ethically.
Such a good point, a number of good points there. Hopefully our listeners are taking notes. I think understanding your audience and knowing how you want to interact with them is critical. And I love how you started talking about culture. So let's talk culture. I'm a big believer, and that's one of the few distinct competitive advantages that are still in the marketplace is companies that develop and foster a great culture. And I know you've been responsible for that at a number of organizations of creating that culture. What are ways people can develop and really create that key differentiator by their culture?
Well, it depends on the company, but I will say definitely look inward and figure out what's happening at the top. Figure out what is going on from a standpoint of how those people are doing their business and how they're interacting with the staff. Because if they're not living those core values, or if you don't even have core values, right, that's really going to trickle down to the rest of the company and the rest of your team. Because how are they going to know what their value is if they don't know what your values are as well? And so as a leader or a leader, group, you kind of have to determine, what do you want your culture to be? Do you want it to be a, kind, loving, introspective culture? Or do you want it to be, win, win, win? No, doesn't matter what we do, we're going to win. I mean, there's a balance, of course, but you have to determine who you are. Who are you as a company? Who are you as a culture? And how can you put that out there to the world so that they can see, oh, I want to work with those kind of people? Because the culture is going to be how you recruit new team members. But I think rather than just putting what your culture is out there, determine what it is first, develop it well, give some good professional development, and then really promote your culture in the authentic way.
So many good tips there. And one of the challenges I see with executives is they may extol this great culture, this belief, like you said, we want to be kind and we want to be friendly, or we want to promote work-life balance. I hear that a lot out of executives. And then you see when it gets a little tough, when volume's down a little bit, when, they got to start, they're losing some deals to competition. It's amazing how that work-life balance goes out the door. And they're grinding on people. We need to win. You need to close more deals. I don't care if you have to work late. How do executives find that right balance of pushing, striving for excellence? There's nothing wrong with wanting to be the best. How do you balance that with still finding, time to let people have a life and enjoy time with their spouse and their kids and make it to a soccer game and go out to dinner? That's where I think when the rubber meets the road, that's where you find a true culture, or where you really just hear it's a lot of hello words kind of posted on a wall.
Well, I'll say, it's different for everybody. And you can never really know until you're in the situation. But to be honest, I think, and why wouldn't I be honest, but to be honest, I think that the real true answer is that you have to make sure and hope that your leadership is being mentored by certain, positive mindsets to help them get through these types of situations, because, they want to win, and they want to be the best, and they want to be the ones that make the money. But with that said, we all are humans and we make mistakes and we learn from these mistakes and we grow and change. But it's hard to really develop a culture without that top buy-in. And when that top buy-in is consistent with their message to you on a regular basis of, make mistakes and we'll all learn with them together. We're going to fail and we're all going to fail together, but then we'll rise back up. Yep. If we have that mentality as a company and we're together as one in that effort, I feel like the culture thrives. But without that type of mentality where, we do it together or, we're separated, that's when you really can determine, where the company's going to go.
And people watch a lot more than they do just listen.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, people can say, this is what we believe, this is what's important to us, but day in and day out, how you treat people, how you interact with them. I love your examples of, you can't say you want to be super innovative and really disrupt the market and then have everyone at your company afraid to take a risk.
Yeah.
And afraid to fall on their face and to fail, because we're all going to. So I love talking. You and I could just talk culture for hours, but I want to ask a couple more questions. Tell me a little bit about how do you help your company, your teams develop an online presence, especially in this environment we're in, COVID, some events are on, some are off. Some companies don't allow you to travel or they don't allow visitors. How do you develop that online presence so that you have a really good following out there, and not just followers from, clicks and likes, but I mean, people who really embrace the content you're putting out there?
I found that you kind of have to just have conversations within your company with those who are willing to put themselves out there, and have the conversation with your leadership and any managers and also sales team, because those are front facing and they're the people who are the names of the company. And as that happens, you want to be able to utilize those people as an extension of your marketing team, because you can't have, thousands of marketing people within your department. I mean, I guess you can, but in my experience, I found, having a small but mighty team, but then you have all these ambassadors and influencers and insiders who help you out along the way throughout the weeks and the months and the years as you go on to really get that message out there. And you kind of just use those people. I wouldn't say use them. You just, use them as assets,
Right.
or incorporate them into your strategy. Because if people like to be involved, people like to be exclusive. And so if you can create maybe a program of just some certain individuals who have swag on a regular basis, and then they're putting it out there, it becomes like this, wildfire, where others see that t-shirt and they're like, where did you get that? I really want that shirt. And after that happens, it just grows and grows and snowballs. So, and if we can ask those people to, hey, go online and share a story about something that happened at a closing, or, why not talk about what you did this past weekend? Humanize yourself and reach out to the industry. It'll all happen on its own, but it has to be authentic.
I love when you talk about humanize yourself and your brand. And executives, I have found, and I'm sure you can attest to this too, some executives really don't want to share anything about themselves.
They're scared to not be professional.
Or perfect.
Right. And that perfection person right up here, you got to make them go away, because nobody's perfect.
Exactly. And I think the best tip I ever got was from one of my guests, Chelsea Pite. She heads up social sales at Fidelity. She does, the Gram is her jam. And we were talking about this exact topic, and she says, Michael, I share a lot of stuff. People ask me, how do you share? How did you feel comfortable? She says, I share personal stuff, but I've never shared anything private. And I think for some executives, if they can understand that distinction and saying, hey, I had a great weekend. My wife and I had a fabulous time being able to get away for a day or two.
Yeah.
That was personal. I kind of humanized it. I didn't have to say where we went. I didn't have to say the exact thing that we did 10 times. There's ways that you can bring up information that is personal, and to your point, that humanizes the brand without necessarily sharing private or confidential information.
Yeah, for example, you don't have to put your kids' names out there. You don't even have to put pictures of your kids if you don't want to, but you can tell a story about a situation you were in where maybe you had a struggle with one of your kids where they wanted something at a store and you had to kind of give them a lesson in, I guess, understanding the value of a dollar. And when you do that, you're passing along your knowledge to a younger generation who can then pass that on to, to school and to their friends. And so as you become, a mentor, you can pass that on. Just like if you drive through Starbucks and then somebody says, oh, the person in front of you bought your coffee. Pass that on, do the same thing, give that, pay it forward. and that will continue on and on. And on social media, everything's going to be out there for a while. Don't put something out there you don't feel comfortable putting, but at the same time, you got to take a risk and be a little bit more open.
Exactly. So many great tips there. So, Eric, we're on the Fintech Hunting podcast. What is technology's role for today's modern marketer? How does technology fit into helping people accomplish all of these things that we've been talking about?
So it's so interesting that you say that, because I feel like I've been talking to my leadership team a lot about, hey, I think we need this new innovative piece of tech. I think we need to bring this on. And, what about this one too? And because when you go to these conferences, you meet these people and they're like, hey, we have this really cool thing. And it is pretty cool, but, it all comes with a price tag. It's kind of like, that show Once Upon a Time, all magic comes at a price. Well, to make social or marketing magic happen, it all comes with a price. So you do have to figure out what fits best for you. So I found, the things that will help you meet people quicker, and not have to take a business card, those, little tap things that will add somebody's information to your phone. That's really helpful. Any kind of really cool tech stack that could give you more analytics for your website or even social media with scheduling. Those are always helpful. There's so many things out there that, will assist you, especially with like apps and, becoming more automated, I guess you could say, in a way that will help the user experience. Because as that happens, and sometimes the user experience is you, but
right.
And when you're doing that, if you can make your life easier and your job easier, that tech might just be worth it.
Well, and I love how you talk about it. I mean, because you go to any conference and there's all these shiny objects, and you've got to kind of sift through. The first criteria that I hear almost all the time, speaking to lenders like you, say is it's got to fit within my current tech stack. If it doesn't, I don't care how cool or shiny, I'm probably not going to move forward. But then to your point of, where does it add value? Are we just buying cool to buy cool? Or, hey, I can now get leads in the system quicker and it can be faster. I can improve the customer experience. And that's not just external, but internal, right? If your loan officers can use a tool and they use it all the time and they're consistent and it helps with follow-up and it will shoot out an email, or you can use data and analytics. So when you're talking to a borrower, you know how much equity they have in their home, and you know that they're living on a block in a cul-de-sac in Florida and everyone else has a pool and they don't, but they might want to take out equity of their home to do a cash out refi to put in that pool. Soon as you can start personalizing and humanizing and using technology to do that, I think that's very, very powerful.
Yeah, any way a consumer can say, if we do something with a consumer and they say, wow, that was worth that money that you spent for that technology, or to innovate your processes, because it'll also give you the ability to do what you do faster.
That is so true. Eric, you and I could go on and talk for hours. I'm sure we will in some other conversations. We're winding down. I would be remiss. I know you've taken on a new position. Tell everyone a little bit about First Option Mortgage and kind of why you selected First Option.
I selected First Option because it was an amazing opportunity, and the culture here is unlike any I've ever experienced. Everyone's so kind. Everyone's so open. There's so much buy-in for everything that we want to do together that I couldn't say no, So the opportunity here as a marketer, or even just as a loan officer coming in, or an underwriter or a processor, everyone has a voice. Everyone has an opportunity to take part in a conversation, and I think that is invaluable. So I love it here. It's a great opportunity to be part of a team that is evolving and building upon what they currently have. And it's a lot of fun. And I was here, and as of yesterday, I've been here a month.
Well, congratulations on that. If somebody wants to get a hold of you at First Option and pick your brain on a lot of the wonderful things that you've shared today, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can send an email to sayhello@myfirstoption.com.
Outstanding. Eric, thank you so much for being a guest on this episode of the Fintech Hunting Podcast.
Thank you.